Welcome to the Startup Competitors Podcast, where we talk with early-stage entrepreneurs to understand what information they use to inform product roadmap, strategy, and market differentiation.
Hello there. Today we're talking with Thor Wood, who is the founder and CEO of SnapShyft. We talk a lot about building and launching a two-sided marketplace, customer acquisition, raising funds, a little bit about the SnapShyft story during COVID, before and after. SnapShyft is in the hospitality space, so as you can imagine, it's a pretty difficult time for them. Just really enjoyed all aspects of this conversation. It was super fun. Thor's an awesome guy, big personality. It comes through in the podcast. Just really enjoyed it. Thor was also on the podcast, The Pitch, so you can go listen to him there as well. And I think he's been on some other ones as well, but I listened to that one, found that one to be super interesting as well. Please subscribe to the podcast. Leave me some feedback. If you want to drop me a personal note, you can do so at mkelly@startupcompetitors.com. And thank you so much for listening.
This episode is brought to you by Full Stack PEO. Most founders start companies because they figured out a better way to solve a problem or serve a need, not because they love tracking payroll, filling out compliance forms, and explaining employee benefits packages. And yet, all that stuff still has to be done. That's why there's Full Stack PEO. Full Stack PEO specializes in turnkey HR for emerging companies, not just those core services, but advice and expertise that help founders maximize employee potential. Curious? Find out more at fullstackpeo.com.
Welcome to the show. Today we have Thor Wood, who's the founder and CEO of SnapShyft. Thor, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Good to be here.
Why don't we start with a quick introduction and overview of SnapShyft?
Yeah, sure. So SnapShyft Labor Marketplace is what we call it. It's a cloud-based staffing software and mobile app that connects businesses with fully vetted and experienced professionals on demand. So think staffing as a service, if you want to play that card. We help fill shifts fast. I mean, at the end of the day, we're combining the best attributes of the gig economy and HR tech, marrying available workers to short-term opportunities. Typically, that's in food production and packaging, food service, hospitality, that sort of thing.
That's what I was just going to ask. So it's two-sided marketplace, right? So you got to bring on both workers as well as sell to businesses, correct?
Correct.
And then why don't you talk a little bit about that? I'd love to maybe get a little bit of the history of the product and company, like why SnapShyft, why you, and then a little bit about how you've evolved, and maybe you can end with some current traction where you guys are at today.
Sure. So I was actually living in Florida as an executive recruiter. That was my career, and I was, living that beach life. And it hit me one day, as we were looking at kind of the discombobulation of the staffing industry. You've got executive white collar and you've got temp agency. What else do you have? I mean, it really, we looked at an industry that I was familiar with, hospitality. That includes restaurants and bars, hotels, food trucks, right? Festivals.
And is that familiarity, is that because you had background in it before you did executive recruiting, or you were recruiting executives for that industry?
Yeah, as a lot of people, I think 53% of the U.S. worked in food service at some point. Yeah, I don't know about this current generation, the youngest, but, I started when I was 14. I believe I was the summer going into 8th grade. I started working at a restaurant downtown called the Teller's Cage, which was on the top floor of the now Regions Tower, and which was pretty cool. And that was kind of my first foray into hospitality. And really, you can make good money depending on the operation you're with. And I saw that really, firsthand. And so worked at the convention center, worked multiple convention centers, actually, spent a lot of time at the former Indianapolis Athletic Club. We're talking about, I think the highlight of my career there was when Peyton Manning was drafted, which was back in like 98, right? And he was living at the athletic club. So that in and of itself made my job better than everybody else's, So, but I did. I enjoyed it. I think, you really, the biggest takeaway for me was the camaraderie, right? You really make lifelong friends in the business. But flash forward, I went to college, went to IUPUI, and was studying architecture technology. And, I was, a 4-year degree turned into 5, 6, 7, the years kept adding on, and I just found success while I was going to school in recruiting. At the time, it was focusing on retail, mortgage lending. This was recession. And so I got a taste for what that business was like before everything kind of came crashing down. And I stuck through it, though, ended up, having a 13, 14-year career in executive recruiting. And that's how I ended up in Florida. One of my clients actually said, we want you to basically bring this in-house for us and do our nationwide recruiting. And I said, sure, you're paying relo. I'll live on Fort Myers Beach. Let's do it. But and that was actually down there. It was serendipitous because I met my co-founder while living in Florida. And that's, put the mind meld in action. We started thinking about ways that we could take the best parts of what I was already doing, which was that high level executive search, apply it to what at the time was fairly infant to a lot of markets, the Uber. Most folks hadn't seen the impact of Uber and Lyft in their markets. And so we were always big fans of that, the Airbnbs, Thumbtack, TaskRabbit, and figured taking that concept of on-demand fulfillment, on-demand gratification, marrying that with, quality control, when it comes to the types of workers you're sourcing, where you're sourcing them from, how you hold them accountable. And if you marry that together, you can pretty much create a nice symbiotic effect that benefits the businesses, the workers. They know how to hustle already. So it just becomes kind of like an extra tool in their tool belt. And that's what we wanted to build. So that was kind of the genesis of SnapShyft, ruminating while we were down in Florida was how do we build this thing? And as you know, that's how we ended up, up here in Indianapolis after a couple meetings with some of the people at Developer Town and Verge at the time, which is now Powder Keg. And that kind of opened our eyes to, we can build this and this is where we want to do it.
Awesome. Love that. And then maybe hit us with some current stats today. How big is the team? How many workers? How many shifts? Any sort of vanity metrics you can share?
Yeah, and it's nice to have you ask that. Over the years, I try and beat the vanity metrics out of, my lexicon, right? But you have to point to something, though. I mean, you've got to, if you don't start, celebrating the small victories, even if they are vain, it becomes a really dark environment, startup life. So happy to talk about that. So our team is still very lean. We've got 3 people that live in Indiana, my co-founder, myself, and then we have a development intern that's been working with us. Well, he started with us back when he was a senior in high school and has continued to run projects with us, since 2017. So he's a Rose Holman student, undergrad right now.
A 3-year intern. I don't know if that's an internship.
Well, it turned from an internship, like what do you know and what do you want to work, kind of the gopher on the development side. And then it became where, he's building, he's got full ownership of features and deploying those out. And really it's not, I mean, he's a brilliant kid. So it's been fun. So I think interns disservice, but he's an undergrad.
I get it. It's all good.
We've got our CTOs in Australia. He's Southside Indianapolis, born and raised. But Tony's in Australia with his lovely wife and kids. And then we've got our development team is based in San Francisco and with a handful of folks in India that have been working with us for 18 months now. So
awesome. And then talk a little bit about on the customer side, what that looks like.
We've got, I want to say the numbers right around 450 unique operations, unique venues on our platform. That's one side of the marketplace. The other side is we have almost 36,000 industry workers. I say that term specifically, industry workers. We don't take people off the streets. Our platform is built for those that already have a career in food service or food manufacturing or hospitality, and they want to make extra money on the side rather than get a second employer or drive an Uber. They can turn to us and leverage their skill set.
Got it. Perfect. So I am always super interested in how people launch two-sided marketplaces. So those numbers, while in the grand scheme of the total economy are probably still pretty small, you are already light years ahead of many two-sided marketplaces with numbers like that. So first, congratulations. And then second, I'd love to hear how you and the team approached launching the product initially. And then maybe from there, we can talk a little bit more about maybe what's next and what scale looks like as you continue to think about how you grow it.
Well, happy to talk about that too. A lot of how we got here was by making just a ton of mistakes, or maybe just multiple small mistakes, or basically testing things out as fast as possible. So early on, we believe that you get the workers excited, and then it stands to reason that you're going to get the interest of the businesses. That was our gamble, and it worked. But I preface all that by saying that before we laid a line of code, we did, 100, 200 interviews, literal hand-to-hand combat, walking the streets, meeting with, directors and owners and GMs, and really saying, all right, tell us your normal day. And, they break it down, and what are your service, they highlight some problems, or how do you solve that? And then how's that working? And, then propose the question about, well, what if you could do X, Y, and Z? Would that interest you? And once we knew that they would be interested, then it was easy to go, and easy is relative, but then we're armed and saying, all right, we know that the customer side of it is interested, are the workers now. And then we started targeting our efforts to really getting workers excited, like I mentioned previous, in general, I would say that this industry is a bunch of hustlers with the best of intent, right? They know how to bounce from job. They know how to make a buck. And, we figured if we could clear the brush, clear all the friction and hurdles out of the way and let them do that they would over time embrace it. One win turns into 10 wins to 100 to 1,000. And we're seeing that right now.
Awesome. Maybe this is the right place to do this, maybe not. I feel like I know the answer to the first part of this. How much has COVID impacted the business? More interesting to me than that is, do you think it changes anything going forward in terms of how you approach scale?
It does. In terms of how COVID would change our approach to scaling the business, yes. We need to fall back on our strengths, right? What are we really good at? And that is fulfillment. Well, what is that? We're very, very good. In fact, we're the best in the industry at getting the right caliber of worker on the job, hands down. We're doing this at 3 times the industry average, which it's quite remarkable. And I've got, I can't say enough about that, because I guess really an anecdotal way to look at it is businesses can't staff or train that which doesn't exist. Right? That which is not in their personal funnel, they can't engage with, they can't sell to about an opportunity. And so you've got this highly fragmented staffing industry, right? I think 140 billion, right, is the contract and temp staffing industry in the US. It's huge, but it's highly fragmented. You've got people all over the place, trying to find their niche or be a jack of all trades, but they're not doing it very well. And the industry average is 34% fulfillment, which is pathetic. I don't know another industry where you can fail, nearly 70% of the time and, still be in business. That's just my 2 cents. So that's kind of and I might be getting sidetracked because, like I said, that's a pool. Yeah.
Is that just hospitality, or is that across the board?
That's across the board in temp staffing.
Wow.
So, and again, you might have some companies that do a little bit better, but inherently you turn to a temp agency, whatever your need is. I need an accountant, I need a janitor, I need a bartender, whatever it is. You turn because that is, in your mind, kind of your last resort. You tried the job boards, you tried Craigslist, you posted on Facebook, you texted, your friends or your employees to get your brother's sister's boyfriend to come in again, right? That only goes so far. And so temp agency, to turn to a temp, you don't know them. You don't know what their background is. You don't know if they've been fully vetted, assuredly vetted. So you don't know what you're bringing into your establishment.
Right.
And so that's where that last resort comes in. And then, the kind of the running joke, our ideal customer is a larger operation. I mean, we work with small and massively large, but when I say our ideal customer, that's what our sales effort is going after, right? That's where we're putting our dollars to go and attract. But the running joke with them is, if I need 3 bartenders, I'm going to ask for 7 or 10. And day of, 2 or 3 are going to show up. If 4 shows up, great, we'll find something for them to do. And with us, they post 10, they're getting 9.4. And, so they've been able to augment completely how they think about staffing, getting the staff levels they need for any event. Our biggest, I think we had, 175 going at once at one single event, so to have a near perfect fulfillment rate with that, I think it's mind blowing. You don't know until you use us. And then you're like, well, I'm not going to use another service again. As long as SnapShyft keeps, kicking butt in that regard.
And then from a venue or client perspective, is that how does cost compare based on their next best alternative? If they're using the traditional temp agency where they have to go get, request 9 to get 4, what does that cost versus me working with you on SnapShyft?
Well, even though we don't compete on cost, we end up being cost neutral. So what you would spend per hour to get a temp agency to provide you with a body, you're going to spend that with us, but you're going to have your fulfillment be 3 times more reliable, and you're going to have a higher caliber because, like I said before, we've got people that this is their career. So it's a bartender that might be picking up a serving shift, or it's a James Beard nominated chef that's washing dishes. None of that really matters as long as they've got the skill set, but that's who we're going after. And so, you're going to be able to get more work done with the dollars spent. So the ROI is huge, but then it goes a step further. And so we've been able to analyze. We know that if you're understaffed as a business, it doesn't necessarily need to be hospitality, but as a business, that it costs almost $6,000 to replace somebody. So if you're down an individual, you're probably going to have an expenditure of $6,000. Half that's going to be on direct expenses where you're paying the job boards, time spent screening applicants, interviewing them, bringing them in for training, getting them on the job and going, right? But then the other part of that, the other half of that is lost productivity. So if you think about it in the terms of hospitality, if you are taking 40 minutes to get us our entrees, we're less likely to stick around and buy dessert or additional. Like there's this cascading effect where if you're not on point with your service, you end up, seeing revenues drop. But then you can apply that to any other industry as well. So lost productivity is huge. So we know that if you're a business and you spend $1 with SnapShyft, our clientele, our client base, they're seeing $5 in return. And it's not an obvious $5 because productivity gains, it's pretty obscure. You've got to dig into your data and see the numbers, but that's what we're seeing with our client base.
Can we switch gears a little bit into competition? You okay with that?
Yeah.
Awesome. When you think of competitors for SnapShyft, who or what comes to mind?
Of course, the temp agencies, 140 billion. I mean, that's a big pie. We want it. So we're going after the incumbents first and foremost. And all of our digital counterparts are going after the incumbents as well. We all are better than using a temp agency. That's hands down. So you've got Winolo, you've got Paired. Those are both based on the West Coast. You've got a handful of, Winolo is more generalized. You can go and get a number of different roles filled there, whereas we're more focused on things that touch the food and beverage space, supply chain space, right? But we've probably got 14 or 15 known platforms that we compete with if we were in their markets. And we're just now kind of stepping into that where, there's some cities that we're in, where that competitor's in as well. And then it becomes the Pepsi challenge. We're all for it. Use the tools that are in front of you. Like we're not mad at any business owner that does that or a worker that does that. If it generates money, do it. But give us a shot. If you're not, one time, try us. If you like us, keep doing it. I mean, to me, it's not a winner take all right now, because if that makes sense. I don't know if I should use that word though, Mike. winner take all. Although we are combining and going after and taking market share from the incumbent temp agencies.
Is there a dominant in the digital space where you play, when you think of your peers who are out there and launching, is there a dominant player in the space yet?
I look at dominance in terms of their war chest or funding that they've generated. And there's three or four actually that have raised, north of, I'd say 14 million each. You've got a company in New York that's raised about 18 million. You've got three in California that have raised upwards of 30, 40 million, 50 million even.
Good night.
You've got one in Chicago that was called Shift Gig. They raised 50 million plus, and they've pivoted a number of times. And now they are a software company selling to temp agencies. That's basically, when you peel back the onion, that's what I've come to understand. They went from 300 employees to like 40. Anyway, I'm not bad-mouthing them at all. I mean, we're all in the same space, and it's like, we're competitors, but at the end of the day, I think we all have a niche that we excel in, and ours is this space, this vertical.
Do you see a roll-up coming at some point in the future, whether that's based on geography or somebody trying to roll up different industries?
Oh yeah, I mean, immediately comes to mind is Uber. They did beta testing for this type of work. How do the whole concept of, we have assets. What are your assets? Our driver pool. We've got these contractors all across the country, and when they're not driving, what else can we do to monetize them, right? And so they looked at Uber Eats. That's a no-brainer. Then a number of other avenues like, hey, this driver knows how to wash a floor. Do you need your floor washed? Or this driver, can cut grass. Who knows? I mean, I know they did some testing in Atlanta, Miami, Chicago, and they're kind of the big gorilla, the 800-pound gorilla. But at the end of the day, I think they're focused on what's making them money right now, which is Uber Eats and the whole thing with Grubhub. So you're seeing it right now that you've got number 2 and number 3 players where Uber wants to grab them and essentially become neck and neck with DoorDash. So I think over time you'll start to see that. And the big if is, I think you'll see that more often in the generalized marketplaces. So the platforms that are doing a lot of everything become maybe attractive for roll-ups, unless you're in a space where, hey, I want to have the experts. SnapShyft's the expert in anything that touches food and beverage. We want them. And then I want the company that's doing that for nursing, or the company that's doing that for childcare. Almost like the IAC approach, right? Buy all the dating apps, or buy all the home service platforms, Angie's List, Home Advisor, so that's kind of how I view things.
All right, Thor, let's talk swag. If I am a SnapShyft employee, what cool swag do you have for me? And or if I'm like one of your marquee clients, do you provide swag to them of any sort?
I love swag, although we've got a dearth of swag right now because we've given it all out. But T-shirts are killer. We got nominated for the Mira for our T-shirt, but stickers. We've got a nice round.
Did you actually get nominated to Mira for a T-shirt?
Yeah, our best tech apparel.
Oh, best tech apparel. I forgot about that. Yeah, you're right. All right, well, tell me about that T-shirt. What was on it?
Well, it's got our logo SnapShyft across the front. It was that simple, but it's black and it's super soft. It's Bella Canvas blend, and it holds up and it makes you look tough. So like for me, sitting at my desk all the time, you get a little pudgy, but you put the SnapShyft shirt on, all of a sudden you think, those are pretty chiseled arms. He must work out.
I love it. That is amazing. All right, and then do you do things for workers or clients?
We do typically stickers, little nickety knacks. We are not as good as the Innovate Map team. I don't think anyone can compete with those lovely holiday cards they send out, but just little things that have a little bit of branding that aren't so like in your face. Just subtle reminders that we want them to wave our flag from time to time.
Awesome.
But stickers are the main one. Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, if you need stickers or a shirt that will make you look chiseled and cool, you can go to fuelmerchandise.com, mention Startup Competitors, and get 10% off your first order.
I'm doing that right now, Mike. Thank you.
Legit. Maybe I should know this. I don't know if I do. Are you raising money right now?
The answer is yes and no. We were kind of in the midst of doing an extension on our seed. And I say kind of because we already had term sheets. And we were doing some efforts locally, right? At least within our Midwest. When I say local, in that regard, I mean the Midwest. So Illinois, Missouri, Michigan, Indiana, investors that most of them have known us and they've watched us, take our baby steps to where we are. And so, are you raising? Are you interested now? When, that sort of thing. But we didn't do a full court press or anything, which that's a whole nother ball of wax. Happy to talk about it, but building out your investor funnel, your pipeline, and how to attack that is a job. And so I know I learned firsthand last year when we raised our seed was that, all right, I'm doing this 12 hours a day. Who's selling to the customers? Who's taking customer calls, the big ones, right? If you're going after these larger contract value customers, and you've got basically Stephanie and Thor juggling that, and she was doing the fundraise efforts as well. It's not like it's we've been able to allocate our time and kind of spread the pain a little bit between the two of us. But really, we started to see that if we're going to do that, we got to do full court press, and we got to know where our unit economics are, certain metrics that we know where they need to be at before we do our next, an institutional raise, like a Series A.
If I gave you $2 million right now, how do you think you would spend it?
Sales. Of course, we'd bolster our customer success, but immediately you say that, my mouth is watering. I'm hungry. Immediately to sales. We've been able to partner with our newest investor from Palo Alto, San Francisco area, B2B SaaS experts, and working with them the last 3-4 months to really build out our sales engine. Predictable sales engine, generating economies of scale, and then of course, then it becomes a multiplication factor. That's where your 2 million comes in. Begin to add to that sales team.
I'm about to go in a place where I fully expect at some point you're going to say I'm not going to answer that. So feel free you shut me down wherever you think is appropriate. But can I pick at that a little bit? I'm super curious about what are some of the modifications you're making right now from a sales and marketing perspective. Like, what are some of the detailed things that you guys are doing to build out that funnel?
Yeah, I'm going to keep it high level for the most part because honestly, I think it would kind of bore some people unless you're super nerdy about what we built. But it's also proprietary, which is kind of exciting. That's kind of the differentiator that we're trying to build in another trench, if you will. But historically, we've done low cost, high yield, like social strategies, right? And so we know that has worked well for us, the last 2+ years. But really, when it comes, so we learned. I'll do a caveat here. When we first launched, our number one customer did about 11,000 and change with us in a year. That's gross. And last year was almost 50. And that was with a customer that had only been using us for about 4 months. So now you can annualize these numbers out. You have to earn the right to really get into that space to talk about these larger contracts. And we're right there doing that. Of course, COVID be damned, right? A lot of these things, we've got in place, but, you're not necessarily going to see revenue generation during COVID unless there's shifts moving on our platform, right? And we'll talk about that. I know you asked about that, and I didn't directly answer you, so please feel free to ask me again. But now with so account-based sales is key, and so it begins with sourcing specific. We've got 20 or 30 different criteria, so it's kind of an either or. If an individual meets some of those criteria, put them in the funnel, right? And then we've got ways internally where we engage with them, put them through our sequences, and really that's how you start to set up and move them down the pipeline. We know that for us, when we get on the phone and do a demonstration of our capabilities to a customer, they get it. Then it becomes a matter of decision making. Sign our MSA, and onboarding them takes less than 30 minutes. So, really just getting up to that point, talking to the right people. And that's what we're fine tuning right now is specifically who we're talking to. Does that answer your question?
It does. I could go deeper, but your disclaimer when you started will get me to shy away from that. It's okay. I am curious about one thing though. Given that it only takes about 30 minutes to set somebody up as a customer, have you done any try before you buy campaigns, and have those been successful? Do you still do them? I'd love to know a little bit more about that. It's something we've been kicking around with some of our companies.
Yeah, we do. A lot of it's, we try to keep it as a tool. So if, for example, if I'm on the phone with a customer, that's an offering I can give them. Well, hey, why don't you give it a shot? X, Y, and Z will get you on our premium. You'll get access to all the premium features, right? Which gives them the desktop portal, so they can do things from their desktop, as many traditionally like to do, versus a mobile app or a tablet.
That's kind of funny. Thinking of that, like that is the opposite of my intuition of thinking of like the premium version is desktop versus mobile.
Yeah. Well, and it's what's interesting though is it depends on the operation, right? So if you've got a traditional operation where the staffing gaps are passed to the talent acquisition or HR team, right, under that umbrella, they're doing this on a 9 to 5. They're doing it at their desk, and for them to do fulfillment, it's easier for them just to open a window. What's ideal from the customer end is the experience. You're able to allocate and create your own hierarchy. So if you could be HR and you do the fulfillment, but you also have a hierarchy of managers on site. So floor managers, shift managers, whatever it may be, and they'll be the ones that get the alerts. Hey, Mike just arrived. Let me see what Mike looks like. There he is. Let's go shake hands, introduce ourselves. Let's give him a quick orientation, of the facility, and here's the task, right, or the restaurant, or here's what we've got, here's the menu, and put them to work. So that's really the general use case. The phone becomes more of the weapon for confirmation and just alerts at that point. We do everything else on the back end as far as sourcing and getting the people where they need to be.
Do you feel like you have product market fit?
I mean, yes and no. I don't think anyone has product market fit until they're at or beyond Series A, to be honest. I think that's what investors are buying into at that point.
That's a really interesting answer to that question. Nobody has ever said that before.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
I don't know either, but I like it. Like I wanted to share that with you. Like that's a super interesting answer to that question, because what I like about it is that it's not you telling yourself a story. It's literally you outsourcing that validation to somebody else, right? Like, I don't know. How could I possibly know? I'm going to try, like when the market thinks I have product market fit, that's when I have product market fit. That's kind of what I hear in that answer. And that's super interesting.
You nailed it. The market will tell you, like, you'll know. And it's not to say that us or any other startup, whether they're pre-seed, seed, what doesn't matter the stage, everyone's got some semblance of product market fit, or they should. If you're generating revenue, I think that's a proof point that what you're doing, some people are willing to pay for. Are millions willing to pay for it? I don't know. But you will know once that happens. So part of me feels like that's a cop out, but at the same time, I think we have to believe that. Continue to do the little things each day, the building blocks to get to that point. I think, and this is anecdotal, Mike, but when we did a video, just hey, I'm Thor, and here's SnapShyft. But the way we shot it was pretty cool. Indianapolis skyline in the background, had some cool transitions in the music, right? But the thing ended up hitting, like 500-600 shares and, thousands and thousands and thousands of views, and people thought this product was ready. So I learned, unfortunately, it's like that was a missed opportunity. We were not even in beta yet. I was just putting this video out kind of like here's an intro.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And we didn't put $1 behind it. So this thing vaulted. And that video, I think, ended up, crossing into pretty high territory. But that's beside the point. But ultimately, we did that in early summer of 2017. And we didn't even start beta truly, like the system doing the work, until September early September, and we didn't go live with some semi-finished product until January. So we were 8 months way too early, 6 months too early in that regard. Anyway, I didn't mean to go off on a different direction, but
no, that's great.
It's one of those, like, I think people will tell you, and you see the voraciousness, especially on social right now. We're all trapped, and what do you do when you have some downtime? You might glance at Twitter and see what people really think in that moment. And that is that, if you can harness positive energy on platforms like that, it's super powerful. And anyway, so that's what we've seen, though. I mean, that works, but then we monitor our use cases. So you asked about trial. Same thing goes for workers. Everyone's, if it's a new product, or, even in areas where you might have competitors with competing platforms, people are always going to be like, all right, do I give this amount of information that they're asking? And what's the return for me for the 10 or 15 minutes I spend doing this? Is it a scam or whatever it may be? And so trying to assuage those concerns goes back to, the UI UX. It goes back to, establishing a trust factor. But what we've seen, once a worker works a shift and then they've got the money in their account, typically within 30 minutes of them clocking out, all right, that's pretty immediate gratification. I want to do that again. I just made $150. And so they end up telling their peers. So we typically see that. So if somebody, and I'm not calling out a business for any reason, right? I think we've got people from high-end restaurants probably making six figures that occasionally will do a shift with us, so it's whatever, works for them. But, if we had one Scotty's Brewhouse worker, we had 15. And then so one, and the average ended up becoming, for every one, we ended up seeing 7 new worker signups. And so that was pretty great organic. And we still maintain about 55% organic, 45%, paid acquisition. Luckily with the workers, the acquisition is sub, $1.10, using our channels, and business is a little bit higher, acquisitions, north of 500 or so. But then we look at lifetime value, and I'll spend $500 all day long to get some of these amazing clients on board, because obviously you saw or heard the comparisons between our first year and last year, the jump in contract size.
I'm going to ask a couple of business model questions that you may not know the answer to, and that's okay. Some of those numbers make me curious. What percentage of hospitality workers are just organically turning over in the marketplace year over year? And what I mean by that is they're not turning, like, not like they're turning over in their job, but they're saying, I'm now leaving hospitality, right? So I was that teenager, college student, and now I've graduated college, and I'm going to go do my white collar job or whatever, right? Like they've decided to go in a different career path. What do you know what that percentage is for how many people are kind of leaving the market on an annual basis?
I don't, but I can maybe back into that number. Depending on the source. I mean, we're very particular on if there is aggregate data or industry specific data, where are we getting it from? And so we tend to turn to, research from Purdue, which has one of the acclaimed hospitality, programs. You've got Cornell is another one, even local here in Indy, like with Ivy Tech, right? So what research are they doing, or do those professors know? And there's some indicators that, and again, it's not one size fits all. Fast food is probably going to be higher turnover than, your typical, mom and pop restaurant that just stands there. You start to build out a family, but turnover still exists. So we've always pegged the number at 70%. So if you have, the average restaurant has around 24 employees, so you're turning over 70% in a 12-month period. Now, it could be you're turning over one position 10 times, right? And that skews, you've still got, out of 24, you only lost one, but you lost that one position 10 times. So that as a manager and owner, you need to address why are people walking out? Typically it's working conditions or low pay, which is, kind of a true negative on anything that's with hourly workers, right? I mean, that's nothing new or shocking. You asked me, and I buzzed my brain here a little bit. Back me up on the question again.
Well, yeah. So that 70% turnover is an interesting stat, right? But the thing that is kind of interesting to me, which it was going to lead me to a question about your platform, which is if that 70% is just, let's say you have 10 workers, shift workers, and 7 out of 10 of them are going to leave you in a year. What's interesting to me is how many of them are then going to another hospitality job,
right?
Versus are just leaving entirely. And then what makes me super interested then in my next question for you would be, what's that number look like on your platform? Because if I can correlate what's industry turnover in the industry back to what your turnover is from users on your shift workers on your platform, that gives me a sense of your stickiness, right? Because if you said, well, when we look at all of our users, we turn over 50% of them, right? So from a customer success perspective, right? So like somebody will come on to SnapShyft, they'll do a couple of shifts, and then half of them are gone. And we know that some of them are going and taking full-time jobs at those restaurants, right? They're no longer shift workers. They got hired at that restaurant, which we consider a great outcome. But then some of them also just left, like they just left the industry, right? Like they're not doing that anymore. And that's like a super interesting number, I think, to try to figure out, because it kind of gets to the efficacy of how people view your platform.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I would find that to be interesting. However, the caveat for us is that, we have firemen and police officers and folks from academia that jump on our platform. So I'm not saying that being a bartender is like riding a bike, but
yeah, that's great. That's great insight.
There is a baseline, like, the way you make a cocktail did not change. It might be a new recipe. The way you're filleting, this cut of meat or this fish, that's pretty, you've got a baseline of skills. And then, so they're able to come in and plug and play. But at the end of the day, what I was, found shocking was, and I say shocking in the sense that who was filling these shifts? So we had a lot of, prep cooks and, dishwashers and runners, so, these guys and gals are the hustlers, right? Inside a venue, they're the ones, moving and grooving, I think, to really keep things flowing. Because if you run out of plates, what are you going to do? We started to see a high caliber of worker that's willing to go wash a dish one time, once a week, once a month, once a quarter, but not full-time or even part-time. So this is where the executive recruiting side comes in. If you want the best candidates, those are the ones that aren't looking. So as a recruiter, that's what you're paying for as a business to a recruiter, for you to go get me a candidate pool that I couldn't readily get, or they're not on the job, boards looking. And that's why you pay big bucks. Well, you're not making big bucks on placement fees and hospitality. So recruiters overlook this space, even in food service, on the line, those types of workers. And so the concept is, we're interesting enough to high caliber workers, and there is no commitment other than be a good human, follow our guidelines, right? Follow our community guidelines, and we have no beef. So you've got people that would never apply to become a dishwasher or prep cook. They'll step in to help. And they're going to do that, again, because they're going to get paid quickly, through our platform, and typically ends up being more. I think our aggregate over 2 years is over 50% more per hour than national industry rates for a given shift. And so, for what it's worth, but on the data, so I wanted to pull this up while you were talking about it, because from a retention standpoint on the workers, we know on a 90-day retention, we hover between 35 and 45% on the workers. But then we also know that you have a certain percentage that return. Sometimes they left Indianapolis, maybe they moved to Las Vegas and they come back. How long were they gone? 6 months, 12 months? I mean, we don't treat them as a new worker in that regard. They come in, they log in, and now they're seeing shifts because they're back in the radius of available shifts. We know a couple of stats I find interesting, because it wasn't always like this. You don't come out of the gate day one and have retention or certain statistics on your user base, but 50% of our users on our platform we know are underbanked. Underbanked meaning they don't have a bank account. They're using prepaid cards. So we've seen that, and we've established relationships with Chime Bank directly to bring them into the banking ecosystem. So now they've got fee-free checking accounts. Why do they do that on our platform? So they get paid by us near instantly. Otherwise, there's a delay. 60% of our users are female, and that wasn't always the case because, again, who are these people and where are they sending me? That's a big question mark or two. And so building that trust factor, I can't stress enough. But then we also learned that this goes back to your original question about the industry and percentages. 2/3 are holding down multiple employers. So they're employed by multiple companies just to get the hours they need. And so then you've got a logistics nightmare. Typically, you've got a business that you want to work with, but you still need hours. And so you've got, out of a necessity, you've got to go find your hours elsewhere. Well, now they can use and find those hours through us. So they may be leaving one company, sticking with another, and using us to now supplement the hours they were getting at employer number 2, if that makes sense.
Yeah. All right, Thor, we're just past 45 minutes. I feel like this is a good place to wrap up. By the way, that was like a phenomenal series of answers there at the end and some fantastic stats. Thank you for that. And congratulations. Sure. That's some awesome stuff. If people want to get in touch with you, learn more about SnapShyft, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, all the social channels, minus, I think, Snapchat. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course our website, which is snapshyft.com. And that's SnapShyft.com. And I will say you can also learn more about us. A big thing, Mike, that I was pretty excited about is that we actually have extended the opportunity. You asked about investing, where we're at. Are we fundraising? We are, in the sense that we've opened it up so that our users, our fan base, our customers can now take part. And this falls under the Obama era Jobs Act, Title III, where you don't have to be an accredited investor. If you like a company and you believe in their mission, you can invest. And right now people can do that at Net Capital. So if you Google Net Capital SnapShyft, there's an opportunity for them to learn more about us, see what we've done year to date, learn more about my lovely co-founder, Stephanie, and the team, and really kind of get some insights that, your traditional website wouldn't share.
I love it. Can you send me that link? We'll get it in the show notes.
Yeah, I will.
Perfect.
Sure thing.
Awesome. All right, Thor, thank you so much, man. Appreciate what you're doing here in Indy and wish you the best of luck as you continue to scale.
Likewise, Mike. Thank you for having me.
If you're thinking of launching a SaaS product, Startup Competitors can provide data on your closest competitors, survey potential users, or provide other product validation services. Learn more at startupcompetitors.com.